Right. Hello, everybody. This is Mika again here at the Sports Chiropractic Chat Show. And I am this evening joined by my friend Daniel Morgan from Wales and Mr. Nicky Kirk, Dr. Nicky Kirk even, from Dallas, Texas. And this is our fourth episode, if I'm not horribly mistaken. So we are cracking on with the show. We are going to be talking about recovery. And that's something that Nicky has a bit of an idea about, should we call it. He's trying to make a bit of a second career out of that. So we'll be picking his brain about, recovery, all sorts of tricks for you sports chiropractors you can pass on to your athletes and that kind of thing. And of course, we'll continue, sort of tried and tested way of throwing bad jokes and that kind of thing. So which we are renowned for already. Now let's just quickly get the bios up so we know who we're talking to. Hold on, let me just share that for a second. There we are. So now we've got the relevant things there. And as it turns out, Nicky is currently at Parker University. So he is a clinical tutor, no less. Is that right, Nicky?
No less, but no more.
No less.
No less or no more, yeah.
Well, quite right.
Doctors.
And obviously your background, you qualified back in the dark old days in University of Surrey in Guildford, and you're originally from Scotland, I believe.
I'm originally from Scotland, from Dundee.
And you don't have an accent to go with that at all.
Well, I had to water it down somewhat. I spent several years down in Surrey. I mean, you imagine going to a place like Guildford with a Dundee accent, it's not going to go over very well. So I softened it a little, move over to the States, and then softened it a lot because I didn't want to become a parody of myself over here.
Yeah, we wouldn't want that, would you?
You can't have that.
No, we can't have that, absolutely. But now, you know what I was thinking actually earlier, you know what, since you're down in Dallas, Texas, I think we're going to have to get a good old-fashioned Dallas, Texas howdy partner out of you, man. That's one of those things. We got to do it.
Let's do it.
Come on, that's
all
it.
Right.
Mate, I thought you were going to say yeehaw. Because that would have been so much better.
That would have been the way to go, but I've never heard anybody do a yeehaw down here. So it might be one of those things like Scottish people saying "okay, the new," which I've also never heard a Scottish person say until now.
And Irish with top of the morning.
Yeah,
just doesn't happen. To
be sure, I've never heard anybody say that. You see, so over here they'd say, I don't know. I don't think anybody says howdy.
No, that's a bit disappointing, actually.
It is kind of disappointing. They do say y'all all the time, and what I like about that is they'll use it in a sort of plural sense as y'alls, as in the the owning. You all own this thing. It's y'alls. Yeah. I kind of like that. It's very efficient.
All right, yeah, fair enough. I can see how that works.
Yeah. So that's probably been my favorite affect that I picked up from the Texans.
I like that.
Yeah. Have you got a pickup truck?
A what? A pickup truck? No, man. I haven't got a pickup truck yet. My brother-in-law has one if I want to borrow one.
Oh, fair dues. Yeah. No, at least, you won't feel too sort of left out if you got a pickup truck on a drive, you know.
Probably will get one eventually. I've got two small kids though, so at the moment it's more of a SUV sort of people carrier type of thing. Capacity and function over sheer workhorse. Yeah, exactly. That's the way I've gone with it.
But one of these days, obviously, petrol prices are going to go sky high. It's going to cost a hell of a lot more. So at that point, you're going to have to really think what you're going to drive.
So you're thinking I should get a truck? You're thinking I should get a pickup truck?
Well, I don't know. How much is petrol? How much does unleaded petrol cost there?
No, they're practically giving it away here.
Gas up there.
They're still doing it by gallon. It's something. It's I don't know, $1. It's probably like £1 for a gallon, something like that.
£1 for a gallon?
Yeah. Sometimes I'll just drive my car around just to burn through it. Just call up my mates in Scotland and be like, hey guys, guess what I just did? Wasted petrol for an hour.
Oh, goodness me. Well, there you go. Hey, but obviously, reason why you're on the show is because let's crack on with that. Let's crack on with the stuff we're here for. So I saw you do a cracking talk in Berlin at the FICS symposium last year.
Yeah.
And remember the one where you're kind of getting excited with your material and running on with it a little bit. And in the end, I think Stephen Pearl threw his stopwatch at your face to get you to actually stop talking.
Yep, he did.
Which is a shame, because I really would have liked to listen to you a hell of a lot longer.
It actually probably always leave the audience wanting more. So actually I accomplished what I set out to do.
You left us hungry for more. And
I did a 3-hour
opportunity, man.
Did a 3-hour one in Oz last year, and they were desperate for me to get off at the end of it. So there's probably a sweet spot somewhere between 20 minutes and 3 hours, and I reckon it's about 25 minutes. I haven't figured it out, but
I like that.
Yeah.
I think anyway, if you can hold anyone's attention for longer than 20 minutes, I think you're doing well.
Must have done all right.
Yeah.
At least a simple person, but you know.
We're all simple folk.
We are at heart.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, that 20 minutes was funny because it was really a synopsis of I suppose a lot of years of work and practical experience, and at the same time you're trying to weigh up the balance, and also at the same time, you know, I'm developing my knowledge base as I go along, so things change so dramatically. And I think probably in the last 12 to 18 months, I mean, that was maybe right at the start where I started to think more deeply about what recovery actually means. And the reason that one of the reasons I actually had to revisit it is I kept getting emails from people saying, "Oh yeah, I worked in recovery too." And I'm like, "Oh, that's great." It's like, "Yeah, I've had 3 drug addicts come through this week and 4 recovering alcoholics." I'm like, "Yeah, that's not the type of recovery I'm doing." So I had to be a little bit more specific, but at the same time, also started taking a little bit of a deeper dive. So I recently started I'm about a couple months away from finishing a master's in clinical neuroscience.
Wow.
Wow.
I know. Smart guy.
Yeah, damn smart.
It's intense as well, though.
You're just rubbing it in and making us feel bad now.
Well, you know, you gotta fill your time somehow.
That's really intense, though. Like clinical neuroscience. That's not a joke in masters.
It's been very content rich. Maybe the challenge with it's maybe not being as applicable as you'd want it to be, because you have to sort of walk within the scope of what you're doing, and sometimes it's just a case of what people are actually available to work on. But where it becomes relevant is when you start thinking about blasting people with different types of any type of recovery modality. I mean, anything could be a recovery modality, in the same way as it could be a therapy. It's just the timing of the application, the dosage is important, and obviously the desire to avoid dependency upon certain things. Athletes could be fragile creatures sometimes, or we all can, but I mean, in terms of their preparation, they can be very meticulous. They can be very suggestible. They can be very easily influenced. They obviously also tend to be younger. I mean, obviously, and they'll be at their late teens, 20s. So you have to be sort of careful of the types of ideas you're giving them and how you're presenting these tools, because I have worked, and I have no conflict of interest. Again, I don't know if it's worth saying that or not, but I have worked with several different recovery or self-styled recovery companies, and they certainly promise big things, and they do conduct certain in-house types of research. But the idea that somebody must have one of these things in order to be able to perform, or that they're somehow it's going to be detrimental if they haven't got access, let's say, for example, to recovery boots or the hypervolt or similar percussive instrument, that can be tricky as well. And then
that's something I've seen quite a bit recently as well, is the recovery boots. You know, I'm into my endurance sport, and I'm a triathlon, all kind of stuff. So a lot of people are posting about, you know, pictures of them on the sofa with the recovery boots on, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, really, is that what it's cracked out to be? Does that actually work? Is it necessary? I don't know. Do you have an opinion on that at all?
I think it feels nice. I mean, number one, it does feel nice. I mean, what's the physiological effect on what systems is it impacting? Do you even need to recover? You know, do we have to think about, are we blunting the adaptive response? Is that desirable in this case? What I would say is, I think where I came to with it at the end of my thought process, or at least when I sort of drew a line, when I first got into it, I thought these things are amazing. This is going to change everything. Biohack. We're going to biohack everything and turn people into superhumans. And the reality was, no. I mean, it's not really doing that. We don't know if the physiological effects are well substantiated, really. We don't know. There haven't been any randomized, controlled trials on them, because the therapeutic benefit of them is probably so marginal that is it really worth it in the end? I think it just comes down to and I don't want to say placebo, because I think we wouldn't want to devalue a placebo effect. At the same time, I wouldn't want to devalue the benefits that a lot of these products offer. But
call it an indirect benefit.
Yeah, it's an indirect benefit, and for the research, even the research which you look at on it is really inconclusive. But as
with everything, though, isn't it? Like, as with everything, needs more research. At the moment, there seems to be needs more research to actually delve into the physiological effects and actually know the mechanism of action, etc., etc. But there seems to be a lot of these fads, not fads, but new recovery methods or treatment methods, as it were, like the Theragun is absolutely crazy popular at the moment as well within athletes who are self-treating. Like those weekend warriors, CrossFitters, they're using the Theragun throughout their entire body, and they just what's the desired outcome, desired effect of it, and it's like, well, needs more research, but like you say, they feel better, and so there's something to be said for that as well, though. Just because there's no maybe RCTs there doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a benefit to be gained.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what's interesting there, and something I kind of want to mention as well, is there's no scope of practice per se for these things. Like Joe Bloggs could go and buy a set of Normatecs and a Hypervolt and could set up a chair somewhere and could be having at it. So the fact of the matter is there isn't necessarily a great deal of skill necessary for the application of these products. But and could they be harmful? I don't know. I mean, could compression boots could potentially be contraindicated maybe in somebody with a history of DVT or some sort of clotting disorder, maybe. Probably wouldn't want to apply it on somebody with neuropathy, but then on the other hand, why not? What I will say about the Normatec boots, which is one of the things that I started looking at with the neuroscience stuff, is that some of my functional neuro colleagues here in the States, they'll use them with patients with dysautonomia and have quite good success in throwing on the parasympathetic brake, as it were, whilst they're rehabbing these patients. So they have found them in an N=1 type scenario. And I wouldn't like to say it was my idea, but I think it was kind of my idea. I don't know whose idea it was.
Take credit for it.
Claim it.
I will endorse you.
But they were the ones in the end that put themselves out there and started actually doing it. It was just something we had discussed. But they'll use these boots, the and it could be recovery. It could be any of the brands, but Normatec has become like Hoover sort of, or Dyson.
Other brands are available.
There are, of course, other brands. I own 4 or 5 pairs of Normatec because I like the brand. I have a good relationship with the company, and I've just found that their aftercare has been really good for me. So those are the brand that they're using. They'll use the recovery boots, and they'll put people on the tilt table, and at the same time they'll be evaluating the autonomic systems. They'll be using a SpO2 monitor, and then they'll do whatever form of rehab they're doing, whatever peripheral stimulation or integration they're working with on the tilt table with the boots going. They found that seems to have allowed people to tolerate more of that neurofunctional rehab, which I think is pretty cool and pretty exciting. Yeah, so then that makes you think, well, maybe in that population there is something to this, but the sort of active, so let's say a very serious triathlete, like, I mean, I don't take my sports particularly seriously anymore, but and I don't know what the right way to term it is, but somebody who has a job, but they're grinding it out 10, 12, 15 hours a week, training for events and so forth.
Amateur, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I do think they run the risk of burning the candle at both ends. And I feel like if they have an adjunct of something which can, I don't know, does it drive oxygen into tissue? Does it help with desaturation? Does it decrease muscle stiffness or the perception of muscle stiffness? I mean, it seems to do all of those things. Just specifically talking about the recovery boots or intermittent pneumatic compression. You can see I just say Normatec, right? Intermittent pneumatic compression is a bit long-winded, but but you could see in those circumstances, I could see why somebody like yourself might have a set of those at home.
Yeah.
Because maybe you're only getting 5-6 hours of sleep a night, and your sleep is compromised, and maybe your eating habits are compromised, and you're on your feet all day because of the type of work I know you do. Then maybe there is good value there. Maybe it does make sense. You get an extra couple of % out your training.
Yeah.
Who knows? Does it mitigate injury risk or probability? I mean, there's no way of ever knowing that either. But maybe at $1,200, you'd be prepared to pay that to take the chance, right?
I think that's it. I think.
If you have a good sponsor, then yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you got to be good for that, though.
Yeah.
I think the key thing to that, though, Nick, is, you know, as long as it does no harm, why not? That's the point there, isn't it? You know, it may help you with an extra, and it's all about those little 1% when it comes to any performance, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know, if it gives you an extra 1%, then you now function at 95% as opposed to 90, 94. So that extra 1%, there's an extra couple of seconds with athletes, and, you know, particularly with triathletes and so on and so forth. Endurance athletes, they're looking to shave anything off any time. So if it does give you an extra kick, then why not? Why not?
And then everybody else is using them.
Yeah.
So this is the
You
thing.
don't want to miss out.
Yeah, totally don't want to miss out.
What if, right? There's that what if scenario almost.
Yeah. So we use them. I mean, I put some. I've used them in a lot of different circumstances or scenarios. I mean, obviously with professional athletes, I mean, it's a given. It's almost an expectation now that there'll be some form of recovery modality. I mean, the most common format has been just offering a recovery menu. So we have an ice bath, which is, you know, Puerto Rico FC. We just had a paddling pool and filled up with ice. Nobody really went in it. A couple of guys.
Nice.
Everybody likes. I mean, let's not lie. Like, everybody likes a good rub down. Like, everybody loves a good rub.
They do.
So if you offer people ice bath, massage, or, you know, pick your poison at the other end of that for recovery, then people are going to gravitate toward the one they like the most, that makes them feel the best, and probably in the end that's going to be the most beneficial for them. Yeah. But in different circumstances, if we take a kind of, maybe I'm tangenting a little bit here, but if we take a situation like, I can't think of really any good examples of this in Europe other than maybe preparation for, you know, Olympic cycles and so forth, where people are having these really intensive concentrations. But here they have these combines, right? Like for the NFL, NBA, I think even MLS has one, which is kind of, to me, absurd. But like, why football players need a combine? Like, who cares how fast they can run and stuff? But how much they can bench press, and anyway, I'm sure that go down well with the English footballers.
Also, these are what, like, basically performance metrics that you monitor. Yeah,
so maybe they have these things called combines. Maybe, I don't know why they call it combined. Maybe it's just because of a combination of different exercises. But for the NFL is the most well-known one. They have to do X amount of bench presses with X amount of weight. They have to run a 40-yard dash in a certain amount of time. There's a couple other things they'll do. I can't remember what all of them are, but they'll do these prior to this, because these are metrics they'll use for recruitment purposes.
In process as well, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So they'll have these preparation programs. So in Texas, actually just up the road from here, we have Michael Johnson Performance, which is a very slick, very well put together performance facility, which is really for all athletes of all ages. I mean, basically they're offering, well, it's funny because they say we're offering elite level facilities, and having been around a lot of facilities in the UK, which are great, and this is in no way to disparage anything in the UK, but you don't really see performance centers like this out with St. George's Park or places like that. So they'll say it's for elite athletes, and they'll have like 12, 13-year-old kids in there. And I'm thinking, man, like, I've never seen facilities like this. They're phenomenal, amazing. Exos, MG Performance. There's a really nice one down the road from here called, a guy called Bobby Stroop runs it. I can't remember the name of it, but they'll have these guys come in for 6 weeks preparation programs, and they'll just hammer them, but just hammer them. So in those circumstances where you're looking for short-term result versus maybe long-term gains, then recovery becomes very important, because every single day they've just got to get up and get after it again.
Yeah.
There's a stopping point. Like you can't do that forever. Yeah. And maybe it just gets them through. So these guys will, that's why they'll say, oh yeah, recover hard, which is kind of an oxymoron, but it's like
recover hard, do nothing. Do
nothing. Like go home and sleep. Yeah, I know. It's this idea.
Netflix, isn't it?
Yeah. So to me, honestly, and maybe this is why I think some people were maybe disappointed with what I presented in Australia, but to me, honestly, it's the wizard behind the curtain. There isn't really a layer of complexity towards this. You don't need a neuroscience degree to be telling people to go and sit in a pair of boots for 20 minutes or jump in an ice bath or go and do contrast. It's more about an adjunctive service that you can have available for your patients that might meet an expectation level, which might keep them within your sphere of influence and allows you to have a smart conversation around it, because there may be real, like for me, sorry, Mika, I interrupted you there. You're about to say something.
No, you carry on, mate. No, I was just going to say that I'm glad I don't now have to go and do masters in clinical neuroscience.
Oh my good God, yeah, same.
I don't have to do that. So yeah, I'm happy.
Don't do that. Leave it to the smart guys. Dear, he says, I haven't passed it yet.
No pressure now.
There's a difference between doing it and completing it. But anyway.
I signed up.
Yes, signed up.
Yeah, I paid the money. Did that really well.
Looks pretty hard. Yeah, looks like a lot of work, a lot of reading. I'm not up for that. Yeah, but yes, this idea. I mean, then you also have to weigh the cost. You also have to weigh the cost or the time cost. Like, is it really beneficial? Like, where can you spend your time more efficiently? So let's say again, let's use an example, Mika. Is it really worth your while doing, let's say, a 20-minute, 30-minute foam rolling session, whether the foam roller vibrates or doesn't? Like, is it really worth your while doing that? Is there something more beneficial you could be doing with your time? Again, given that you're running a business, FICS probably monopolizes some of your time, decent chunk of your time, I reckon. Yeah. And you've got a family. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
It's also that cost benefit ratio. So again, for me, things coming back to the boots, like things like the Normatec, where it's a passive effort where somebody can sit there. We believe there's good benefit towards it, or believe there's good benefit in the therapy, but they can also be sitting there and they could be working, or they could be whatever. I mean, if it's a footballer, they're going to be WhatsApping,
some emails if need be,
emailing escorts and stuff, or whatever pro footballers do these days. But
yeah, you never know.
WhatsApping, but yeah, like it does. They can lie there. They don't have to think about it. It doesn't take a lot of cognitive effort. It's relaxing. Maybe it sets them up for a good night's sleep. I mean, I think there's ways you can leverage it and plug it in where it can be more valuable. I think the idea of people going and doing like a 20, 30-minute session, or even like a 45-minute CrossFit session, you know that expression, like your slow is too fast and your fast is too slow, and people live in this, like, I think I mentioned this in the Berlin talk, which by the way, that's Charlie Francis. That's not a Nicky Kirk thing. In fact, it's super diluted. I think it came from Charlie Francis via Derek Hansen, then to me. So it's like,
it's that 80-20 rule, that, isn't it?
5 times, you can now use it and call it yours, isn't it?
It's something along those lines, yeah. Although
I'm sure it is your thing now. That's fine.
I think too many people have been called out stealing Charlie Francis's material and not giving credit, that I don't think I would ever dare. People get quite upset about it, and actually Derek Hansen's a good friend of mine as well, so I'll continue to credit him. If it's another fella.
Great reference there. I'm happy with the reference. I think that everyone should be happy with those references, I think. But it's don't they use the same principles with 80-20 stuff in terms of endurance? So the 80-20 rule with endurance sport, Mika, you know probably more about that than myself. But looking at 80% of your training is as slow as you can go, and then 20% as fast as you can go, over whether or not that's months, weeks, days, whatever it is, the training cycles that you use. 80% of them should be as slow, then your slow isn't slow enough, and then that 20% your fast isn't fast enough. Is that kind of stuff that you would agree with, both of you?
Yeah, I think it's the same. So that's really the principle, I think, is that if you got, I mean, actually it could really be any type of event. I mean, I think obviously volume and preparation is important. Like your body has to be prepared to meet the demands of whatever it is you're going to go and try and do. But it's this idea that, let's say the energy requirements for a soccer player or a football player, for example, versus or a rugby player, which are sort of mixed energy sports, but you can prep for that fine. You can give people exposure to very high velocity in small doses, as in you just ran your best time, you're done. Even though we had another 5 programmed for you today, that looked wonderful. You're done, good enough. But the reality is they sit in that sort of medium to high zone. I mean, however people want to define that, whether it's zone 4 or whatever people want to call it, somewhere just above the anaerobic threshold, flitting around there, and they burn themselves out. So they become so fatigued, the tissues become fatigued. They're overloading. I mean, again, I'm sure you guys have seen some of Tim Gabbett's stuff, and I know that that even some of that has now become everything becomes controversial, right? Like, anyway.
But he had to write the amendment to that, didn't he? Because he hadn't taken into, then he did the house analogy, I think, didn't he? So looking at the floors and the ceilings based on 10% rules per week and looking at all of that kind of stuff. And I think it was specifically saying that obviously at your longer distances, if you're trying to increase 10%, so say you're on 26 miles and the next progression the next week is to add an extra 2.6 miles onto that, you're then running to 28.6 miles that week. Whereas he's saying, like, kind of, if you want to progress through that to the sweet spot, isn't it, 10% week on week, if you start down at low mileage and you're trying to get 3 miles, then the next week you're only doing 3.3 miles. I think he was saying that, like, on the floor of that, you can essentially work at 15 to 20%, but then at the ceilings, you want to work at maybe between 2 and 5%. So those increases aren't necessarily, they're disproportional, but proportional to an extent where you don't want to necessarily cause an injury. I think that's the adaptation that he recently changed in, I think it's 2018, maybe. So it was it's quite an interesting one, that, though. Really interesting Gabbett stuff.
Yeah,
I do like Gabbett stuff.
And I think if you look at those like heuristics rather than as an absolute rule or just another marker rather than
guidelines,
the marker.
Isn't it? Absolutely, it's guideline stuff. And I think, as with anything, it's Gabbett stuff is probably it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but I think that it is the best that we have at the minute. I don't know if you like, particularly for volume and changes in volume.
I think you have to be careful that our role as MSK practitioners or sports specific, I don't even know what we call ourselves anymore, but you have to be mindful that our role doesn't become the person that stops people training. Like the sports scientist has sort of been painted with that 100%. Brush a little bit. So I think when you look at, if you look at that type of work and just say globally, clearly like a spike in training volume that you were not prepared for is probably not going to be a good thing. Yeah, but it doesn't mean they're going to get hurt. Like, it doesn't automatically mean that. It's just you're pushing it. Like, are you pushing? So this was from Brendan Marcello said this, and I really like this, and I use it. I'm starting to sound like David Brent. My wife was right. But if you use it like, so Brendan Marcello gave a talk. It was actually, the talk was on sleep as it happens. It was a phenomenal, it was just a great presentation, so professional. Like, funnily enough, we're talking about FICS Berlin, where Stephen came in through a Swiss alarm clock at me, or whatever it was. Some chocolate. He did give me some chocolate also, which was fine. Nice. Yeah.
Well worth the alarm clock in the face then.
Yeah, 100%. But it's funny, a 90-minute presentation, the guy finished it it was just perfect. Like, I looked at the clock, I'm like, he's given this before. This is not some rambling Scottish idiot that's just going to get up and carry on until he's told to stop. But anyway, the way he phrased it, and it was specifically related to sleep, but it could be related to anything, was that you're the only way that in a chaotic world or volatile environment like sport or just life, is you're either, what you do is either stacking the odds in favor of success / performance, or you're stacking the odds in favor of injury or failure. And so the Tim Gabbett stuff fits into that quite nicely. Like, if you're continually spiking in training volume, then you're probably stacking the odds in favor of a negative outcome. And that's and actually I use that all the time contextually with patients or athletes. And now that I'm teaching, I use it with the students, even when they're preparing treatment plans for their patients. I say, look, well, you don't really know what's going to happen here. Like, we have this sort of 4-week therapeutic opportunity that we have in a clinical setting, where we have to see something happen in 4 weeks, or nothing. Hopefully not. But hopefully something good happens. But whatever they do, stacking the odds one way or the other. And then the patient's psychosocial background is also stacking the odds, and probably that's even more heavily weighted. And I just like the way that seems to sit better with me than trying to pull out individual metrics, which again is probably explains maybe a little bit as to why the recovery stuff, and maybe why I'm not really speaking on it as much anymore, or maybe nobody wants me to speak anymore. It could be that. But one of the reasons that I kind of backed away from that and started to look for other I don't know, other areas of interest or other areas of development, is I realized maybe there just isn't that level of complexity there, and maybe it's just not having the impact that I thought it would have. And I'm okay admitting that. It wasn't like I dedicated 20 years of my life towards it. I mean, it was an area which really piqued a lot of professional interest for me. I thought, well, what more can we do within our scope as practitioners to help athletes? Like, I mean, that was really the whole point.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be if we're going to be prescribing something, then we should certainly understand it and know what works better, and maybe what's less effective, so we can at least have an intelligent opinion or an informed opinion, rather than just doing what everybody does. In the end, we end up doing what everybody does anyway, but at least let it be for the right reasons.
Exactly.
I'd agree with that, because back in the day, I mean, we always put ice on it, and now you're kind of like, what do you prefer? Like, would you rather have something warm? Would you rather have something cold? Like, what's your bag? Because ultimately, whatever makes you feel more comfortable, it's essentially going to make you feel better. If you sat there freezing, like, you're not going to, and you're shivering, you're shaking, and you're thinking, is this how, you're going to be really tense. You're not going to be really enjoying that experience. And, even psychologically, you're going to be like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's it's whatever works for you, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And I think
you have a major fear-based reaction then already. You do your session and you're really dreading your recovery, which is that's not really productive at all, is it?
Defeats the purpose. But this is my thing about okay, and I don't want to say anything which is controversial, difficult, but just for me now, working in an educational environment. And this is not just related to DCs. I mean, I know in the UK we don't graduate technically with a doctorate, but we assume the title of doctor, most of us, DC at least.
Yeah.
In the US, it's considered a doctorate level degree. And obviously the physical therapists, the PTs have gone after that. Now they get their DPT. But I would still contend that it's not, I don't want to get fired. How am I going to say this? I would contend that it's not a doctorate in the sense that I don't think we're skilled in appraising the information that's out there, or appraising critically what we're doing. I don't think that's a controversial statement. I think that's obvious.
Absolutely not.
But I think that to illustrate the point is that I'll have people will still ask. I mean, not as much now, thankfully, but the ice is a good example. Is that people say, "Oh, but I've been told we shouldn't put ice in anything," and I'm like, well, the recommended guidelines are that it may not be beneficial, but let's say a grade 1 ankle sprain or grade 1, I mean, it's going to change nothing if you put ice on it at all. They're still going to get better. They're still going to be able to rehab, and they might like the feeling of ice, they might not. But it's this inability to appraise what's out there, and people just get so stuck, and then they just go and do whatever the first person they work for did, and that to me is like a big weakness in not just our profession, but also with the DPTs, or so-called DPTs, or so-called DCs. I mean, I'm not ragging on either profession. It's just it's one of the biggest weaknesses I see in this area,
though, doesn't it?
Sorry?
Following the herd.
Almost.
Not really utilizing your brain cell and actually coming up with a novel idea and figuring out what's right for you. or your patient, but you regurgitating stuff from a textbook that was outdated 20 years ago because that's what you read when you're in uni.
Yep.
And I didn't question it ever since. Even if you have potentially you have numerous different things that have happened that would have convinced you otherwise had you been receptive to it, but you chose to kind of just stick to what you knew. But you know what? I mean, in Finland, right? So that's where I'm from. We everybody has a sauna in their house. Well, just about everybody. And I tell you what, the finest form of recovery I've ever experienced is after a day skiing or a day being wherever doing physical activity. Jump in a sauna. It's 70, 80 degrees, and you have an ice cold beer.
That doesn't sound bad. That sounds glorious.
So we could go into business. We could start this new thing, if you're interested in making an absolute killing.
We need to find a good face for the company though. So Mika, do you know anybody?
No, mate.
No. All right, fair enough.
Yes, Dan, but his COVID beard is getting a bit longer now, so at least he can fit first.
It's COVID beard.
It's getting a bit around now, and the hair. I don't know what I'm going to do if these carry on over the next couple of weeks. This is going to be absolutely ridiculous in the next couple of weeks. So I apologize in advance for that.
That's why there's Instagram filters and Facebook filters. You can come on as an alien. You can come on as anything you like.
Oh, that's next time. That's next time.
It's going to be the paper bag overhead, with a couple of wee holes cut in,
Yeah.
You need to use the Viking filter, Mika. There's got to be one.
No, see, I have to renounce that. Finns had nothing to do with the Vikings. That was all the Danes and whoever, Norwegians. They're the ones who you need to blame, not me. I've never been to Dundee.
Set our record straight.
It's not like Scottish people hold grudges for a long time or anything. So probably.
You're just going to paint your face half blue and then come after me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Love it. I had a specific question. I don't know whether or not this is up your avenue. I'm assuming it is because it's recovery related. So, what's your general thoughts on? So I do a little bit of stuff around tendons and collagen supplementation with tendon recovery. So obviously you've got oral supplements, you've got liquid collagen, you have various forms of collagen, mollusk collagen, bovine collagen. I know with British athletics they use bovine, and I know that the Premier League seem to be using a product called IR90. Do you know IR90?
No, it hasn't come over here. Maybe it's under a different brand name over here, like EHA90 or something.
Yeah, it's oh God, who is it? Can't remember who the actual makers are. Oh, soccer supplements. Soccer supplements. Yep. Yeah. So soccer supplements. Now they use mollusk versus bovine, etc., for the tendon stuff. In your experience, have you found those beneficial for specific conditions? Are they just generally beneficial for recovery, or is there just very little evidence to see the effects of them?
So I actually think that's really cool, really cool concept. So occasionally, I don't do a huge amount of clinical work at the moment just because of the nature of my position, but from time to time, people will fly in. That makes me sound much better than I am. I will treat people in the clinic, but they won't. I'm not saying they're flying in specially to see me. They're absolutely not. They'll probably get in. They're like, oh, this. Man,
I'm here anyway.
Got the booby prize, but so. And I don't know how it is for you guys, but maybe you see like a lot of, and I hate to use the term, but failed rehabbers or chronic rehabbers.
Yeah,
imagine if you're working with tendinopathy, you absolutely will.
100%. And like I do a little bit of shockwave therapy, so like that's essentially where we're at with it now. Is that I tend to use it as my first protocol with tendinopathy alongside appropriate loading, etc. Just because we've got the machine there, and why not? And there seems to be an additional benefit to combination of appropriate load management and shockwave compared to either in isolation. So we may as well combine it if we've got the knowledge. So that's kind of what we do. But then I've been toying with adding other supplements in. And my big thing is that I don't want the patient to pay more than what they're already paying for a treatment. And is it going to give them that extra 1% or 10% or whatever? Is it going to get them any further than what we would have anyway? And I think it's going to be extremely difficult to say that without any evidence and without any RCTs done, etc., etc. But theoretically, could you see it having a benefit?
Yeah, we actually use so the work that I'm most familiar with is Keith Barr's work. He's out I don't know if he's at SoCal or he's anyway, has done a lot of work in this area in California. But he provides, so if you dive into his research, I mean, it's nutrition. It's pretty it's pretty dry stuff. So don't dive into his research. But cherry pick. No, I was going to say cherry pick. I know we're allowed to cherry pick because we're clinicians, so we're allowed to cherry pick the stuff that suits our beliefs. Because we're not researchers, right? But he actually, so if as you go through some of his methodology, he actually describes how he creates the supplements where he did a lot of the research and had a look at collagen turnover and an orientational architecture of the connective tissue. And he found very specifically that using vitamin C, but it could not be, I think one of the experiments, the vitamin C was accidentally exposed to sunlight, which completely messed up the results. But when they started to look at and I can't remember the specifics of it, but when they combined vitamin C with a gelatin supplement, but basically it was Ribena, vitamin C, and gelatin, and he made like little chewy molds. It was about the timing of the supplementation and then the bout of exercise you prescribed. So in the case of tendons, it was 3 times. So the prescription is, and I've used it, and I don't know how compliant people are, but I mean, I use this stuff with my kids, by the way. It's like I don't make it. Like I have my wife, I ask my wife if she would consider making these calls, because I'm constantly have like a sprained right ankle. So I'm constantly rehabbing it, but it's a certain dosage of vitamin C, gelatin, stick it in an ice cube mold, happy days. They make their own gummies. It's pennies. And the dosage, the prescription for it is you take them about an hour before you're going to do your bout of exercise, and the exercise will vary depending upon the type of tissue that you're trying to affect. But we know that bone, and I think to an extent tendon as well, responds really well to novel loading. So it's a 6 to 10 minute bout. So if you've got somebody really compliant, you can get them to do like 3 to 5 minutes, maybe it might be skipping, jump rope, as they say here in the States, and have them do that through the day. Now, I would also believe, like, if you have access to vibration plate in your place of work, or you don't need to. I mean, you could, or isometrics, anything that's going to apply the load on the tissue you're trying to affect is going to work. Yep. And the way he describes it is, he says it's basically the collagen or the supplement is the letter, and the exercise load or prescription gives it the address, so it knows where to go. It's going to go to the most bioactive part of the body. So
where the demand is, isn't it?
Exactly. Where the tissue turnover is going to be. So that's how I've used it, and I haven't ever bought a supplement or sold a supplement for that matter to do that. I just give them the recipe and say that if you want to stack the odds in favor of a good recovery, then I recommend that you do this. And I think it's more for somebody to go and do like 5 minutes of bouncing on their toes on the spot is a lot more palatable than giving them something fairly easy to, I don't know. I can't think of a silly exercise at the moment because there are no silly exercises, right? Just silly people or poorly prescribed exercises. But
hang on.
But the latest case we had was she's a swimmer that came in, a Division I collegiate swimmer. She had a bilateral acromioplasty, and 20 years old, and just chronic non-remitting shoulder pain. And I would counter that probably she still has the same thing as she had prior to having the surgery, just simply because the scapular control. I can never remember now what you're allowed to say and what the biomechanist purists will jump down your throat for saying, but I know you're not allowed to say six. I know you're not allowed to say six scapula anymore. Otherwise, Adam Meekins calls you up and swears at you down the phone or something.
That's not allowed. What's the other one? Like scapular dyskinesis, that's not allowed. Yeah. Because then there's arguments as to whether or not that actually matters. Because does it is it just one of those things that you're born with? Is that, is that how you move? Is that evidence for lack of control? And it's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy. It's even like to the point now with diagnosis, even when you're looking at subacromial impingement, it's just subacromial pain, and greater trochanteric pain. Like I used to be a bursitis or a glute med tendinopathy, but we can't decide whether or not a bursa or a tendinopathy is actually the cause of pain. So we're going to just call it a pain syndrome instead. It's like, it's baffling.
Which is cool because the treatment looks the same anyway. But I mean, it's
yeah, absolutely.
It's just that you become. I come and chat with you guys on here, and I'm thinking,
a middleman by just saying, yeah, it's painful there.
Yeah,
do that.
Yeah, there we go.
It's great for us though, because things like diagnoses are becoming less specific now. If you're looking at literature, like even in the literature within the research, low back pain is non-specific mechanical low back pain. Like it's not SI syndrome, it's not Facet syndrome, it's non-specific mechanical low back pain. That's what the literature, so I actually did my master's on non-specific mechanical low back pain, and that was another thing that I was going to talk to you about, because I used Complex, or it wasn't actually Complex, it was the Chattanooga, but using Complex technology, so it was a Complex basically.
Yeah.
But I looked at low back pain with that, and from doing the literature reviews and reading around the subjects and whatever else, it became evident that it was actually used a lot in post-surgical recovery, particularly with ACLs and knees specifically. And they were showing that it actually allowed probably about a 15-week increased recovery time. So, well, decreased recovery time. So they recovered 15 weeks earlier with the use of Complex, doing a single leg sit to stand, which was phenomenal, right? In a case of post-operative ACL, if you can shave off about 3 months from your recovery to return to sport, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So, yeah, and it is a simple protocol as well. Like, they just put it on the specific settings and specific frequencies that were available within the kit, and they were knocking off like 15 weeks.
Yeah, that's unreal. I mean, those are so eStim. So it's funny, like eStim is one of these things that just gets pilloried. I think also because you can just go and buy it in a mall from some fellow that's selling like the acupuncture. So, but if it's appropriately applied, like and you use it to sort of overlay. I mean, you can increase voluntary. You can override the voluntary contraction. You could probably override a certain level of inhibition.
Yeah. And so we actually used it with superimposed movement. So it wasn't just passively. But this is one of the things that we were talking about earlier, is the use of passive compression versus active recovery. And I think we combined that to an extent. Like, it's obviously an active recovery because you're doing something, but you're having an external stimulus as well, which was, we found that with our study, I don't know if it's not published. Yeah, I'll say anyway. We found with our study that we were able to reduce pain during a contraction, but there was no significant increases in MVCs, so it didn't increase power output. But interestingly, with those patients who had non-specific mechanical low back pain, we were able to reduce down the pain during a maximum voluntary contraction. So it actually then started to think, like, when I was writing it up, is like, what actually are we having an effect on you? And I think this comes again kind of into your clinical neurology stuff, is that you'd argue, are you maybe just having a little bit of a pain gate here?
Yeah, but that would be okay if it was, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But nothing happens. It's not, I mean, see, now this then comes back to the simplicity of what we're actually taught versus what actually probably happens. It's this idea that it's just this monosynaptic reflex that's going on, and that none of that actually travels up to the brain.
Yeah.
But
of course it does. Yeah.
There's so much more going on there. I mean, if you look at even cortical mapping or representation of the muscle in the brain, it's obvious that there's more going on. And then supraspinal inhibition. I mean, are you having an effect on that? There's arthrogenic inhibition, myogenic inhibition, and these could be areas potentially where the recovery modalities are actually having an effect. We just haven't. See, I originally was thinking about things at that sort of level. Nicola Maffoletti, I'm probably killing his name. Nicola Maffoletti is a PT out of Switzerland, has done quite a lot of interesting work on eStim and how he ties it into, or his group rather. I'm sure it's not just him, but how they tie into the rehab protocols, and it's always superimposed with movement. I wouldn't use it, with the exception if I was using BFR, which is probably a whole other conversation. But with the exception of using it with BFR, where somebody is pretty acutely post-surgery, which I don't do, by the way. I don't do immediate post-surgical cases. It's not really my bag, and it wouldn't be something I would ever claim to be good at. But I've used BFR with eStim. It's brutal, by the way.
Yeah.
And effective, but yeah, always superimposed. Whether it's shoulder rehab, I mean, it's shoulder rehab, basically you're going after the serratus, and if it's lower back rehab, I'm probably going after the glutes. I mean,
yeah.
In all honesty,
we did erectors. We did erectors purely. So when you look at the effectiveness of exercise and stuff like that, there was a couple of literature articles that are out there that were saying if you're not including an extension protocol into your rehab, not hyperextension, just extension, then you're probably missing out on a key factor. Because again, when you look at MRIs, if you've got a discal issue in an MRI, you're often going to find that there's atrophy associated with the deep lumbar erectors as well. So the thought process was that if we can increase the activation of the deep erectors, are we going to therefore affect pain and dysfunction? And that was our kind of working theory with our study. Where, interestingly, both groups responded from, all we did was a Roman chair. So simple, extension protocol, with or without stim. Both groups responded, but no significant difference between groups. So they both had a significant decrease in their pain values, but no significant difference in their disability scores. So it's quite interesting, actually, to say that, all right, it seemed to help them during a pain for that actual contraction. There was reduced pain during the testing procedures, but on a day-to-day level, there was no significant difference between them, which is really interesting.
How long was that? How long was the protocol?
That was 4-week protocol, where really we should have been going up for 12.
Yeah.
We know that. Like we that was one of the main things. I think that what we struggled with was we needed people to buy in for 12 weeks without having any other intervention, without having any other forms of communication, without any medication, to get them to, a lot of these people, obviously they're taking part in a trial for a reason, because nothing else seems to have worked. So to get them off their meds for 4 weeks and stuff like that was absolute chaos. And they needed to be in a university setting as well. So we limited that to 4, even though it was 12 sessions. So they had, I'm convinced it was three sessions a week for 4 weeks. But we should have continued that for a further 8 weeks, really, to get the true outcome, which we know. And it would be interesting to do again with those 12 weeks.
I think you're there highlighting the difficulty of clinical research, full stop, really, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Number one, get people who are willing to take part. Number 2, get them to abandon their lives as they know it to take part in your study and comply.
Yeah.
And number 3, I suppose, get them to try and mitigate any confounding variables that might come across. So yeah, better you than me.
That was fun. It was a great, it was a lovely study to be a part of, because I did learn a lot reading around the subject, but I didn't enjoy the actual logistics then. Put it that way. That was
the data collection. Yeah, sure.
That was not fun.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think it hurts to become like a subject matter expert in something either, though, right? I mean, I think it's somewhere that we probably are not so strong on. Like, at least in that process of research, you're forcing yourself, you're obligating yourself to develop a much deeper understanding.
What
100%. You're
100%.
looking at, and I think there's value in that. It's just not easy.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't something that I'd looked at either. You know, prior it was something that I'd never considered. I was quite lucky that around the time that I was doing it, the complex was being more widely used. So then people were actually coming into clinic. They're like, "Oh, have you seen these complex?" I was like, "Oh yeah, actually, I have." You know, and they're like, "Yeah, what do you think?" And I was like, "Well, I'll tell you in a couple of weeks when we know." But yeah, it's quite interesting. What about from a recovery perspective? I mean, essentially, I know you said you always use it superimposed with movement, but there is recovery settings on the equipment. So do you find that is almost a replacement for active recovery? If that is again, that's probably an oxymoron there. But
recovery, yeah. But we all know what you mean, though. I mean,
yeah, I suppose.
It's a kind of a funny one, because you know the one that sort of popularized it, I think, was the Mark Pro, like the little green box, which is supposedly the waveform there was specifically for recovery, or what they would describe as a non-fatiguing contraction. And I mean, all you're doing there again is, look, there's a somatosensory part of it as well, isn't there? Like, every time you contract a muscle, you're having an effect on the spindles, you're having an effect on the
of course,
on all the QT. I mean, you're just having an effect on the whole area as in that sense. So maybe that level of stimulation does something. Maybe it resets the gain of the muscle. I mean, who knows? But is it just the fact you're activating the muscle pump to try to, I don't know, clear stuff out? But what are you clearing out? I mean, that's the other part. It's like they even talk about, you've got metabolites, you got your sort of CR creatine kinase. Yeah. Your lactic acid that we now know is a fuel source rather than an inflammatory metabolite. So yeah, I mean, I would say, like, I do like using e-stim as a recovery modality, but I don't, because I like how it feels, but I don't think for me, it wasn't very effective. Like, if I was thinking about playing anecdotally soccer tournaments, like, it certainly didn't cut down on me getting cramp or fatigue, and I still cramped up in the car on the way home, even though I've got the muscle pump going.
I tell you what, though, it does feel amazing afterwards, doesn't it? Like, you do feel really light. Like,
you feel nice, loose and light. Yeah, I mean, again, perceptually, yeah, it's probably great. Is it better than walking around or what have you? Don't know. I mean, it's the same with the compression. Like, if I was given the choice between we're using some compression boots, or going and doing some jumping jacks in a swimming pool, or even better, in the ocean. Not in the UK, by the way, but certainly not in bloody Finland. But
it's a bit, 100% not.
In Puerto Rico, like, I mean, we used to take the guys down to the beach. I mean, what a privilege! Like, take the guys down to the beach, and they'd get in the Caribbean Sea, and that would be the recovery. I mean, beat that. Okay. The Finnish way sounds good too, but
yeah, you know what, Puerto Rican way sounds lovely as well. I mean, you know,
it wasn't bad.
Sitting on the sand in the sea, and with a pina colada in your hand, hey, nothing wrong with that, eh?
A pina colada. I don't know, man. Yeah, I actually think the pina. No, that would be. I think the pina colada, they say, was invented in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah. There's a claim.
For people. Hey, you know, one question I was going to ask you, coming back to the one thing you said earlier about sunlight skewing the stuff with the vitamin C. So was it more or less effective? That was when you got exposed.
It deactivated it. It was completely ineffective. Their experiments did not work after the vitamin C was exposed to sunlight. Yeah, they found no effect at all. But when the vitamin C had been well protected in a lab in a basement, I think the story was, or the protocol was, one of the story. It was a procedure.
Yeah. So there's a lot to be said about protecting your supplements and not allowing them to get denatured, basically, or deactivated.
Yeah, but then also speaks to sort of chaos of trying to do everything right all the time. It's like, you may think you're doing things right, but maybe your kid grabbed your vitamin C powder and put it on the windows. I don't know, but You know, you leave the stuff sitting in the car one day. You've prepared these gummies and you leave it sitting in the car one day and like, oh, they're still good. And yeah, probably they're not. They're probably not.
Yeah, exactly. No, easily done. I mean, you know what, there's there's obviously a lot to be said about when it comes to elite athletes and your professionals and then of course your weekend warriors. Obviously completely two worlds apart anyways. And I mean, a lot of the stuff that we have been discussing so far is pretty much applies to, I would say, more towards the elite athlete as it goes. But if we're going to kind of condense it down to, you know, what most sports chiropractors will see is probably the weekend warriors, really. That's our bread and butter in clinic all the time anyways, unless you are very fortunate and work for a professional club. But so based on the conversation this evening and a little sports chiropractic chat, what you reckon are the top 3 take-home clinical pearls for your average sports chiropractor? What are they going to tell their patients, you know, how to maximize their recovery? What do you think?
So I think it's a great opportunity for engagement with your clients. I mean, we're all about building community and serving certain communities. And I think number one, if you don't know who your avatar patient or client is, then this is probably not going to work. So number one, you have to really know what community is you're serving. And I think you sort of have to be part of that community as well. Like, I think it's a bit disingenuous to say, I'm going to go after CrossFitters because they always get injured, but never have participated or actually show the sport any respect. I've been disrespectful of CrossFit in the past, but it's always kind of tongue in cheek. It's just like,
yeah.
But I think that's number one. I mean, I think it's be genuine and engage with the community that you want to work with, and recognize that even although these are amateur events or amateur competitors, it doesn't mean to say they take it any less seriously. In fact, I would wager that they take it more seriously because they're basically fitting their life around their sport, which, like in your case, Mika, I mean, I'm sure you get up very, very early in the morning sometimes to just get some mileage in. Prior to probably not now. Yeah, now you can do it any old time, but
between races, man.
Yeah. but you know, I mean, I know people that get up at 3-4 in the morning so they can go and get their mileage in before they go to work. I mean, to me, that's a more serious athlete than somebody who's getting paid to do it.
Yeah, true.
Because they're really actually making true sacrifice to do that. So so think about their lifestyle. How can you serve them? Like, how can you make things as easy as possible for them to come and get what they need? And then set it up that way. So what are you seeing in terms of demand? Can you engage with these people at their events? So if you know that there's meets which are going on, can you have equipment and material which is portable? So that's why I particularly like we set up set up recovery tents. We would have in the recovery tent e-stim. We'd have a couple of the hypervolts and a couple of Normatecs. And stuff's not cheap, but at the same time, it's not prohibitively expensive. If you think about your marketing budget for the year, and people do tend to can throw good money after bad. I mean, if you drop 3,000 to 4,000 quid on just a nice, like, little sort of boutique setup, that could become your kind of MO. You may not have space in your office to do it, but you've just opened up a completely different branch and saying, I'm not just serving you in my office, and I'm not coming out to just self-servingly screen people so they can become patients. Like, I'm providing you something of value because I'm part of this community, and people. We talked about people liking it, and they value it. Like, it's a good service to provide. So, I mean, also at the same time, don't force yourself on them. But I guarantee if you have a tent with some reclining chairs, a couple of Normatec boots, a couple of e-stims, a couple of hypervolts, and some nice yoga mats and some relaxing music, even if it's just a pair of eye cuffs and the Headspace app. Like, that's a complete winner, and it's all portable. It can all be folded away. It doesn't take up space in your clinic, and you don't need any special training to use it. I mean, how big of a win is that? And then it's actually something that you can look at even charging for. Like, if people come in and say, if you want, you can pay X amount per month. I mean, there's many clinics in the States here that don't have any practitioners at all. They're recovery suites. So mom and pop just pop in there with their kids. They pay $50, maybe $100 per month, and they go in and they sit in the boots or they do whatever. But it's over here. I mean, and if it's over here, it'll start to gain prevalence in the UK. I mean, we tried it in London. It's probably a little bit ahead of its time, or maybe the location wasn't right. I mean, it's also part of it. but I had a lot of interest from companies like not CrossFit Games, that's a big company, Turf Games, which is like a fairly similar. It's worth having a look at, but even if just to look at the format of the event. But it's one of these. It's like a Tough Muddery type crowd.
Yeah.
Don't go to Tough Mudder; they'll want 200 grand from you. But there's other local people that will be putting on small community events. You engage with them.
Yeah. We do local Harriers, all of their running events, you know, and we go down there exactly as you're saying. They actually provide the tent, which is nice.
Yeah.
We just go in, take our benches, take the equipment down, and we just treat them. And it's, as you said, it is actually a free marketing tool anyway, because you do get out there. We actually get some of the fourth year students from WEOC in as well. So we get them down because obviously we've got an abundance of athletes that need treating. So we just take them in and you know, we expose them to a little bit of field work, as it were. And it's such a good way to do it. It really is a good way to do it. I can't, you know, say enough about that. We always do little bits like that.
And then it becomes an opportunity then for education. So if you have something you stand for, so basically just think of it this way: when somebody's in a pair of boots, and this is going to sound really cynical and bad, but it's not meant to, is that if somebody's in a pair of boots, they're doing a 15-minute session, they're stuck. So if you're like, exactly, they're stuck, but they're happy. They're stuck and they're happy. So you can say, hey, do you want to try this like little collagen supplement that I definitely haven't left in the sun because it's Scotland and it's never sunny. But we're offering these types of services. It just becomes. I don't think you can ever use the stuff and say, hey, I'm going to make a lot of money from it. Yeah. But you can use it to provide value to maybe separate yourself a little bit from other people. Just again, to develop community. Yeah. In terms of what I'd be looking at for mine, I mean, that's it. Like Normatec or any sort of compression boots. I'm probably going to have like some sort of home compression option for them if they're into that in my clinic. So I quite like Incrediwear. Believe what you want about the heat return process, but the fact of the matter is I like the product and people seem to do well with it. So it's just home sleeves or compression, what have you. Seems to work pretty well. The hypervolt, so people can sit down there and put themselves on the gram, basically have at it with some sort of percussive device. And beyond that, I mean, there's not much else to it. We haven't really talked about photobiomodulation.
I've got one.
It's a bit late for that.
Yes, wait. I'm not throwing that. I'm just throwing it out there, but I'm actually looking at doing some research on, particularly on the intranasal photobiomodulation.
Okay.
But that's a whole different conversation. I'm running a protocol for it right now.
We'll have to have another episode for that.
I don't know if people really want to speak about in nasal, basically LED lights or not.
So I've got a Thor, and in the States, a Novo Thor is huge.
Yeah.
Novo Thor it is essentially a sunbed that is fitted with lasers, or LED lights or laser, depending on the wavelength, obviously. And they literally sell it as healthier, younger, fitter. And it's an amazing product. Like we've got obviously the handheld Thor, but amazing. Like it is a pretty good tool to have, low level laser, or photobiomodulation. No.
PBM.
Yeah.
PBM.
If you want to put the treatment in or therapy in, PBMT or PBM, whatever you want.
Love me an acronym.
Yeah, same. But yeah, so really cool. I'd be really keen on that. We can definitely get a second one on that on.
Okay, once I've got my protocol and stuff set up, we can chat about what we're looking at. But there's a lot of garbage on it, but there's a lot of actually quite interesting stuff. But I mean, a lot of it's really about how can you basically deliver the appropriate amount of fuel to the muscle, the tissue is going to be active, because we know that typically it's not oxygen deficit, right? It's actually about oxygen delivery or saturation at a muscular level. because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be breathing out 4% of oxygen. You know what I mean? Like we're not completely desaturating most of the time. So anyway, yeah, this is a much longer conversation that's probably not worth not worth getting into right now, because I could just go again. But again, it's still recovery. But it also speaks to this point for me. It's like if you really want to be a subject matter expert, and again, I got probably Brett Jaros I stole this from him kind of, but he said he just got sick of presenting other people's stuff.
Yeah.
So he really wanted to start to make his own opinions and do his own work. And I suppose I start to feel the same way in a lot of ways. It's like I can get up here and regurgitate work that Shona Halson's done or Brendan Marcello's done, but it's not my work. It's just stuff I've tried. So let me come up with some theories. And
I think I've been keen to do a few trials on comparisons of shockwave versus laser or PBM. And the one thing that I was told was that there's going to be a lot of companies out there that wouldn't want people to see that literature.
Right.
Because of, whether or not it shows a, one in a bad light or whatever. But again, it depends on the conditions, etc., etc. And my take on it is that you wouldn't necessarily use shockwave on a condition that you would use PBM for, because they're working on different ends of the spectrum. So, like for me, I would find that the PBM LED stuff would be better for the acute injuries kind of stuff, and then your chronic stuff would be the shockwave. That would be my general take on it. I don't know if you would disagree, agree, or would you be using it for a different reason?
Yeah, I'm more interested in it so I actually do agree with you, by the way. I think if I was thinking about the effects that like low level or whatever they call it, class 4 lasers, basically. I think those would be appropriate in an acute muscle injury type situation, even maybe for pain modulation. But I'm really thinking here about maintaining tissue health or tissue viability in season, for example. Again, if you looked at the English Premier League or the Championship, even more so, like the fixture congestion that they get, like, is there anything that you can do? You're not going to really stop them playing, and you're not really going to stop them training. It's just not an option. So, and you can't really play around with the training load that much. But is there anything you can do adjunctively that might just help get them through it?
Yeah, so, cryo chambers are becoming a little bit more popular over here now.
Yeah, I'm still not quite sure where I stand on those either. Just based on the practicality of it and the cost, sort of prohibitive. It's never going to be impactful because it's not accessible. Like, how do you stick? Who do you choose to go through it? Like a football team, like who gets to use it? Like just your best players, because you can't stick the whole team through it. Like you can't stick the whole squad through it.
You could, but ultimately, I've looked into these, and ultimately once it's on, you bet it costs you say like 30 quid to turn it on, right? And then once it's on, it then only costs you, say, I don't know, another 30 quid to run it for the day. So it's turning it on is the expensive part, getting it up or down to the temperature. It's maintaining it at that level is easy. So once it's at that temperature, maintenance is fine, very little cost. It's then just getting people in. Yeah. So once it's on, you ultimately you'd rather do the full squad rather than do one individual player, because just to have the one player is going to cost you more money than, well, for value for money.
I get it. So you're talking about the big sort of van type things where they just freeze the whole thing.
Like the huge kind of stand-up ones. Yeah, if that makes sense. Rather than the cryosaunas, I think there are in there.
Which is what I would see like more ubiquitously over here. But I don't know. Again, it's just, I guess it's quick. Again, nobody knows what it does. Like they're going to tell you it affects cytokine levels and interleukin levels and all this.
The anti-inflammatory effect versus it's the same stuff.
But what effect is it? And is it having the same effect on me as it is on you? So should I just use it anyway? Like for me, there's a lot of unknowns around it. But I mean, people are going to do it. So
I think
if it's there, people will use it.
There's meant to be good evidence for sleep recovery, though, isn't it? That was aid in sleep.
I don't know, because what does it do? Like, does it actually create? So does it create an acute sympathetic spike, or does it? Because the way they present it is it's going to boost your immune system and it's going to be more parasympathetic. But like, if I fell in a freezing cold lake, I don't know if I would have a parasympathetic reaction to that. I think it might be the opposite.
Yeah,
exactly.
But so these are, I suppose these are just some of the things, and these are just my opinions, right? This is not based on anything other than just what I think. But
yeah, this is the kind of stuff that nobody really knows, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's interesting though as well, because I actually agree with you with what you're saying there, because there is evidence to say that like cold water swimming in open lakes is actually good for depression. So, you know, you're going to create this euphoric response, which we get with exposure to cold. So how does that therefore affect sleep?
I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe it does. Maybe just perceptually, I feel I went for cryo today. Now I think I feel great. So now I think I'm relaxed. Now I'm relaxed. It could be self-fulfilling. You just don't know. I mean, and I know you could say that about anything we've discussed.
Yeah. Truly.
So I'm certainly not hating on cryo chambers. I just think for bang for your buck, like realistically, a guy like me or you get, well, I shouldn't speak for you guys. I mean, I don't know your personal circumstances, but realistically, we're probably not going to have access to cryo chambers.
Not in the garden, anyways.
Yeah, at least not in the garden. Yeah. So then it becomes a sort of the domain of a fairly exclusive few. So then you're really talking about the elite of the elite, and even then it's going to be elite sport. It's not even going to be ubiquitously available for most track and field athletes or anyone really, except for football players and maybe rugby. I mean, maybe rugby at some of the bigger organizations.
Yeah.
So and I think that's one of the, not just about recovery type modalities, but in terms of athlete treatment or the way that some of the bigger organizations work over here is that they're basically blank check organizations like Aspetar or they're blank check organizations. Like the money is no object. So I don't think those types of things drive innovation really. Like I don't think you have to struggle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think it's always good for the athlete or for the profession to have everything available. Like sometimes I think it's good to maximize what we have. Like
super cool.
Yeah, I guess and I think the perception of that then is not good I think the perception of somewhere that has everything, even although, and I'm not specifically saying that anywhere has substandard care at all, but people can get blinded by shiny things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
And it's this idea that, you know, people go over to, and again, not a reflection on him personally, but just like, let's say they go to Bill Knowles in Philadelphia for their rehab, and it's like, is there nobody you could find in the UK that was able to do what he did at all? Or was it just because you felt like going somewhere new, which I get?
Yeah.
But
exactly.
But then can you weigh up speaking about recovery, can you then weigh up the cost of having a transatlantic flight, being in a different time zone, different environment?
Jet lag.
I mean, is that you start to weigh up the different sides of it and you think, is it worth it?
Did you actually hurt yourself or did you help yourself?
Yeah. Or were you just away for 6 weeks in isolation? No, you know, and no distractions, so you were just able to get on. It's
exactly.
kind of one. So that's kind of sort of my kind of bugbear with these big. It's just jealousy. I mean, honestly, if I'm honest, it's probably just jealousy, but.
Well, at least you're mad enough to admit that.
It's like if somebody came and gave me a blank check, I'm not going to be like, no, I'm far too. I have ethics. I have ethics when it comes to that sort of thing. I'll take the money.
Battered Paranormatex and you know, giving me some Ribena chews. You know, under my cowboy hat for weeks.
With the straws.
But hey, chaps, you know what we're going to have to do is leave it here for this evening. You know, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you guys. There's a wealth of knowledge and wealth of information there. And I'm going to have to do the Stephen Pearl and chuck that grandfather clock at you both now. But otherwise, this podcast is going to run, like, I think we're done, 70, 80 minutes here. So it's getting to that point where nobody's going to listen to us waffle anymore.
Waffle quality. I like it.
Yeah. But Yeah, so just a quick word from our sponsors just to finish here. So obviously FICS is running all the sports chiropractic relevant education stuff, be it the ICSC course, you know, the head injury module that allows you to change your qualifications from CCSP or ICCSP. I always get these acronyms messed up, but you know, gives you the latest qualification in sports chiropractic, so you can join on the teams that go to the games, whether it's World Games or lower level games. So you need that. Also, we're compiling lots of new stuff in the education side on FICS website. So there are going to be all sorts of little webinars. You can do short courses, and also these little entertaining, light-hearted, bantery sports chiropractic chat shows that are going to live on YouTube every Sunday. So hopefully you won't have to sit at home feeling super bored in a lockdown, and you can use your time well to pick up new knowledge, pick up new ideas, and hit the ground running when it's time to get back into business. So Nick and Dan, thank you very much, lads, for joining this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we're going to call it a night.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, fellas.
Bye.